Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan. Did I get the right elbow? Uh, she is in the background having a nice sit, a little cooler, closer to the floor. My air conditioning is not. It's old. It's doing what it can. It's very hot in South Jersey, Pineys. But let's get into it because this is a Piney podcast. Governor Murphy shows Governor Tyrant Murphy, or Tyrant Governor Phil Murphy, shows support for caravan that blocked New Jersey Turnpike over no extra money for immigrants. Again, this is woke-tarded. So you have the man in power saying to the people who are protesting against the people in power, I support you. Okay? That should be an immediate response from the people who protested to say, Phil Murphy doesn't support us. He doesn't. Because what he can do is he can say, oh, I support the protest, and then do nothing. Assuming, I agreed with this, which I don't. So, you're being stupid to accept his help. You are being placated by that. And Phil Murphy is just like most of the Democrats. They pretend to be woke, they pretend to care about this stuff, and then in actuality they make their own decisions totally apart from this. They don't really care about anything other than staying into power. This is a guy who worked at Goldman Sachs. Do you think he really sat around in Goldman Sachs saying, oh man, I wonder what all the immigrants are doing. Oh man, they don't have enough money. I feel so bad for them. No, he didn't say that. He was working at Goldman Sachs. He was about making money. Okay? If you were interested in helping the plight of the immigrants in this country, you would become a social worker or someone who helps immigrants. You'd become an attorney, you'd set up some sort of charitable organization or some sort of group to further the cause of immigrants. Would you work at Goldman Sachs? Would you associate working at Goldman Sachs with, well, we'll help the plight of immigrants or poor people or whatever? No. And I'm not begrudging Goldman Sachs for making money. That's what they do. But here we are again. How many times are you guys going to do this? How many times are you going to appeal to authority and then let authority go, I support you, and do nothing? Again, I don't support this move. I certainly don't support blocking the turnpike. This is the same sort of stupid moves the Republicans make, right? The Republicans, they'll shift more to the left to own the libs, as they say, to say, oh, see, we support gay rights more than you do. Which is a strategy, but it's not a very good one, right? Because if you're shifting more left than the people who are on the left, then you're not really an opposition party. Not that I'm saying they should do anything different for, say, the gay issue. But when it comes to this issue, there's only one thing Murphy should do, and that is have the protesters removed from the turnpike because they're blocking traffic. Nothing heavy-handed. They get arrested, they go to the lockup, maybe they get a fine or community service or whatever, some slap on the wrist, and then they're sent their merry way because it is a peaceful protest. But when you block the turnpike in New Jersey, that has to be stopped. And I'm not suggesting there should be any heavy-handed thing, as long as no one was hurt, as long as people were peaceful, then at worst I would say this is a fine. This is a fine for wasting everybody's time and money and energy. And that's it. But Murphy would rather grandstand on your issue. And you're dumb for accepting his help, because that means he'll do nothing. If you came out and said, well, we don't accept Governor Murphy, he didn't come out here, he didn't change the policy, F him. Then you would see a response, and his response would be to remove you from the turnpike, to crush your organization. Because that's what actually means to go up against the power structure. They come to crush you. At first they kind of they might tolerate you if they can. If you're stupid enough to allow him to tolerate you, then he'll do nothing. when he doesn't tolerate you, he'll come to crush you, and that's when you know you're being effective. But you won't be crushed. You know, Murphy can do this all day. You guys are just, you don't know what you're doing. Terrible protesting. Mask won't be required in New Jersey schools when New Year starts. I mostly believe this from Tyrant Governor Phil Murphy because he's running for re-election in November, and putting the kids back in masks is going to be problematic for his election chances. So, whether or not the moment he's elected he immediately clamps down, that's another story. This is why you absolutely cannot elect Phil Murphy, Pineys. You cannot. Because you run the risk, a huge risk, that he is just going to, I've been reelected? Oh, right. Oh, looks like COVID's bad. Yeah, I let it go for a few weeks. And I'll lock it all down again. Now, will Citarelli, the Republican candidate, do that? It's possible he might. But it's unlikely. It's more unlikely, I'll say. Now, he might be forced to by the legislature, but most of the stuff I've heard from him is he's against the lockdowns. He'll at least stand up and probably say, well, according to these stats, the lockdowns didn't work. Let's try something else. He may end up doing some half-ass measure. He may be pushed into it by the legislature, which is also why we need a Republican legislature. We need to get rid of the Democrats because they've accepted a position which is untenable, but they refuse to, leave it because, first off, the rules don't apply to them because they're in power. So you've got many examples of these Democrats breaking the rules, and what happens to them? Nothing. Secondly, they are in a position where they feel to do anything else is too Republican, and that makes their base very angry. So that puts them in a weakened position. And thirdly, they have no problem destroying the businesses because that puts more people on the dole, and that gives them even more power and makes you more likely to vote for people who are going to hand you free money. So we desperately need to turn New Jersey red, would be my solution to the problem. New Jersey Attorney General Gubir Grewal, he's a Sikh, thus the, man, that's a tough name. He's stepping down to join the Security and Exchange Commission. So I'm not sure who Murphy's going to replace, but it's very interesting that he is going to join the SEC. I don't know, in terms of the SEC, in my view, doesn't really do anything. It hasn't done much. Let's put it to you that way. But Grewal is obviously in the Democratic camp, and so he's getting a promotion the way a lawyer in that realm would get a promotion. So good for him. Supreme Court won't sidetrack plans for natural gas pipeline. I have mixed feelings about this because obviously the gas pipeline is going through the Pinelands, and I worry, it's going to cause some issues. But at the same time, we were close to being energy independent, right, under Trump. So this may be a case of Biden saying, well, I'm trying to screw over all the red states and punish them, but New Jersey's a blue state, so I'll just pretend like I don't see this. I'll just pretend like, whatever. I know, it's a Supreme Court, but they're influenced. So, should they run through, certain land? I don't know. I don't know. I'm very much against the state forcing you out of your own land, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Once again, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote a dissent that the majority view that states had surrendered their immunity by ratifying the Constitution has no textual, structural, or historical report. I'm not a big fan of her anymore. Ever since she accepted that book deal, I find it extremely suspicious. $2 million book deal. After suit, New Jersey to house inmates based on gender ID. This is an effing disaster waiting to happen. Because essentially what it means is that, and I don't like getting super political in the Piney podcast. I try to get away from politics in this because I'd rather talk about fun stuff that's happening in New Jersey. But this is going to directly affect you, especially if you're unfortunate enough to have a friend or relative inside the system. So, especially if that person is a woman, because they are now saying, however you identify, that's where you go to jail. So, you know, I told the story before. I think way back when I had a client, and he was gay, and he was getting divorced, and he had to dust up with his husband. He ended up going to jail for a few nights for it. So he got into the system, and he said at first he was petrified. They took him past the cell where they had it segregated by race. They took him past the cell that he thought he was going to go in, which was all guys, and he was black, so they were all black. And he was like, oh my God, those guys are going to eat me alive, because he was, I mean, he wasn't a small guy, I'll say, but he wasn't, you know, he wasn't like a muscular guy. He was an actor. And so he gets to processing, and they start asking him about his orientation. And the moment he tells them he's gay, he said, it instantly switched. He said they brought in a different cop to take care of him, a woman who was much more deferential and nice. He got brand new clothes, brand new Converse. He got a dorm assignment. They didn't put him in the cell. And he said suddenly it was like first class treatment. He said the shoes were so nice, you know, he wanted to keep them. And they were like, couldn't be nicer to him. Prior to that, they were treating him kind of like a thug, you know, didn't seem very concerned about him. The moment he told him he was gay, completely different treatment. Completely. Which tells you, Pineys, if you ever go to jail in New Jersey, you know what you have to do. You have to suddenly say, well, I'm gender fluid, I'm non-binary, or I'm gay, or I identify as a woman, because you're going to be put in a much nicer situation. The problem, of course, is they're going to end up putting trans women, or people who claim they're trans women. Now, I'm not denying trans women. My friend's trans, but they're going to end up putting guys in who just game this system. And then you're going to have problems with rape. It's absolutely going to happen. I mean, when you're in jail and you have nothing to lose, when you live that kind of lifestyle, you have nothing to lose. Oh, you know, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, people in jail, a lot of them are sociopaths. They don't care. They just see an avenue to get up on the system and to, you know, even if they know they're going to be eventually found out, punished, removed, they don't care. For a couple of weeks, months, days, whatever, they'll have their jollies. So this should not happen. Now, that being said, probably need just a separate transgender wing in the prisons. Now, I read this article. It doesn't totally say that some of it seems to imply that they're going to be mixed in with the women. But it's hard to say. Maybe there's something I'm not reading correctly here. But this was already a problem in the UK. They removed a rapist who claimed to be trans, put him in a women's prison, and he raped women. So this is going to be a nightmare if you do this. If you just throw the trans women into women's prisons. Because they are criminals. Okay? They are criminals. And just because you're a trans woman doesn't mean you won't have sex with women. Doesn't mean you're not oriented toward women, I'll say. Right? So this is a disaster. It shouldn't be done. But again, these are Democratic politicians virtue signaling to the mob. See how wonderful and woke we are? We made the prisons amendable to trans. Oh, they're not amendable to anybody else, but to trans people. It's going to cause nothing but problems for the state. They're going to get sued. There's going to be not only lawsuits, but criminal charges. And then what? Then you'll have situations where prisoners or prisoners' families sue the state. More millions of dollars down the tubes. All could be avoided by simply saying, okay, we have transgender, intersex, non-binary, whatever. We'll separate. I mean, they have tons of wings of prisons. They let out tons of people for COVID. They could certainly take an unused wing of the prison and say, that's where all the transgender, non-binary prisoners will be. You know, and they can only do so much. They are prisoners. I mean, what next? I identify as a free person. Let me go. I identify with the innocent. What about someone who identifies as a wolf? You're going to free them? Oh, can't keep a wolf in here. It makes no sense. But again, this is all the woke cancer eating away at the Democrats. And we're going to have nothing but problems for the months ahead. And what will happen? The Democrats will come out and somehow blame the Republicans, as they always do. And not that Republicans don't have their problems. They certainly do. But this is just a disaster waiting for to happen here. A lot of court stuff today. New Jersey lawmakers approved fixed odds horse race wagering. Whoop-de-diddly-doo. More gambling in New Jersey. What? Okay, whatever. At least it's bipartisan. At least we can all agree we can gamble. Cherry Hill native amongst first responders in South Florida searching for the survivors in the condo collapse. Really horrible down there. I could not believe the video. At first I thought it was, I've seen videos like that in third world countries, Russia and places like that. You see them and you just go, well, they don't have the same building codes we do. And then something like this happens, you're like, whoa. It's unbelievable. But, at least here there will be comeuppance of some kind. They had a building collapse in China just recently, too. But, the communists kind of kept that quiet and said it wasn't that big of a deal. But, I mean, now we're up to 11 dead and 150 people still missing. The tragedy is this happened at night, too. Somebody I'm related to said, it's a shame it didn't happen in the day. At least, most of the people might have been at work or out of the building. You can only imagine you're lying in bed and then the whole building collapses around you. I mean, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. So good luck to all the crews, including the one from Cherry Hill. What a bummer. And finally, a little bit of a white pill. Pineys. Full steam ahead, New Jersey State Fair returns after 1 year absence. Hooray! And you know what the State Fair means. It means animals and carnival rides. It's basically a carnival. I'm glad. The slogan is more fun in 21. I'm glad something's coming back. I've been trying to set up book signings and comic book signings, comic book shows. People are still a little antsy about, signing up for it. Now, you have to do this stuff so far in advance, right? When they plan the summer stuff, they're planning it like back in the early spring at the latest, sometimes a year before. So that's a shame. So a lot of stuff just got canceled. People were afraid to go out, but now everybody's desperate to do something. So what is opened is doing pretty well, is my understanding. So the fair will return to the county fairgrounds on August 7th and run through the 14th. Excuse me. And this is at the Sussex County Farm and Horse Show. Sussex County. So that's further up north. Looks nice, though. I mean, look at the rides. Got some good rides. Because of the financial impact of the pandemic, the upcoming fair will highlight various local nonprofit organizations. Good for them. Speaking of nonprofit, South Jersey, don't forget our big thing, which is the Italian Festival in Hamilton, New Jersey. That's in July, so that should be coming up soon. I don't know the exact date. I'm not sure the exact date yet. I know it's coming up soon, though. It's not going to be 4th of July weekend. Usually isn't, but that. My understanding, that's on. That's on this year. So they I don't think they had it last year, but this year, definitely. And I think that was the first time in like 100 and because it started in 1875, so it would have been the first time they canceled it in like 140 years. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And considering that we had other pandemics and such, that's even more crazy. You know, part of the reason everything closed down during the pandemic is just because we are so connected with the internet and communication. You know, stuff like this used to happen. You know, imagine a pandemic back in the 1920s. Like, you're not even going to find out about it until until it's like mostly over, or until it finally hits. Oh, is everybody getting sick? You know, I mean, it took days and days for word to reach people. Now it's just like so instantaneous, and unfortunately, I think there's a downside to that too. But anyhow, that's it from South Jersey Pineys. Stay cool, and we'll see you in the next one.